Hi everyone. So we have with us K. Sridhar, who's written this very interesting book called Ajita, and as you can see, I put a lot of effort into reading it, and so we hope to have a nice session for you all. So Sridhar is a theoretical particle physicist. Have I got that right? Yeah, and he also reviews art. He writes poetry. He has interest in the creative fields, and this is a very interesting book for more reasons than one. So it has a braided narrative. Um, Talks about a 5th century philosopher, Ajita, after whom the book is named. He is a Charvaka philosopher and somebody in Sridhar's imagination who came up with his own theories and philosophies and talked about materialism as a philosophy. It is braided together with the story of a more contemporary person, Moksh, who grows up in an atheist household and who works with the Communist Party of India. And these two stories are not just braided together, they sometimes double back on themselves. Sometimes you can read the book in two different ways and you will find that you are reading the same story. So the book is written according to a French literary movement called the Oulipo movement, in which they believe that certain constraints that you can impose on yourself as a writer, they free you from some other limitations. And Sridhar, would you like to explain the book in your own words, like short explanation? Yeah?
Hello, Bangalore. Can you hear me? Okay. All right. It's a very good thing and a very bad thing to follow a session on polyamory. And if I had been in Suchi's place, I would have pitched for our session by saying it's all about sex that we are talking about. Okay. But no such luck. This is a book on philosophy. So the rest of you who want to leave, please leave before I start. Um, I think it's actually much more urgent to talk about these matters. Philosophy is such a word that people react to it, thinking,
right.
oh my God, why about philosophy?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have, like to be honest, I
Uh,
wouldn't
to-
have bought your book if I thought it was about philosophy. But I found
Yeah.
your work interesting.
To the extent that they actually found it difficult to slot me in any session here.
Okay, okay.
Anyway, but yes, like you said, this is about group of materialist philosophers called the Charvakas, who date back to the 6th century BC. Um, and this person I'm talking about, Ajita. Um,
Yeah.
this is the book, and I should mention before I forget that this is the cover design by a very dear friend, the very famous artist Nalini Malani. And in any case, Ajita was known as Ajita Keshakamlin, and he was a 6th century philosopher, contemporary of Buddha and Mahavir. And this group was a very interesting group because they were very, very rigorous materialists. What does that mean? It means that, of course, they said there is nothing like a God, there's nothing like a heaven. Okay, they said there's nothing like a soul, there's nothing like a self that survives anything. In fact, Ajita, my hero, actually is attributed the statement that the Buddha and an idiot will burn alike on the funeral pyre.
Right.
Nothing will remain. You don't take anything further from here.
There is no life except what we see here.
Yeah, and there are no, like the Buddhists believe there's a cycle of births and rebirths. These guys said there's no cycle of births and rebirths. There's only what we have here and now.
Yeah.
They went one step further. They said it's all just matter.
Hmm.
And the Buddhists laughed at them and said, oh, maybe you don't really use a mind, but even you have to accept that there's something called a mind. There's something called mental states. There's something called consciousness.
Right.
And they gave a very interesting answer to this. And the answer was that at a very elementary level, I'm paraphrasing it in modern language, but at an elementary level, it's all matter. Right?
Right.
But if you take composites of matter, you take chunks of matter together, then somehow magically life arises. consciousness arises, mind arises out of this. And it's the magic of putting things together. Okay? And this, I think, was first explicitly stated by the Charvakas.
Right.
Anyway, before I go into the thing, I just wanted to say that what got me thinking about this novel was the question that what would have the life experiences of a person like Ajita been for him to arrive at this kind of a philosophy 2,500 years ago. Okay, to deny God, to deny heaven, to deny soul, to deny all the bullshit, even laugh at the Buddhists and say, what are you talking about, past lives and future lives, right? So where did this man come from? Of course, we know nothing about it. We know nothing about the history of the Charvakas. So I decided the best thing to do is to write fiction about Ajita's life. And I don't want to take the responsibility because, you write about anything today, someone comes and says, how can you say that, right? So I didn't say that, boss. There's another guy called Moksh who's writing that story. I didn't write that story. So I don't want you to stand with black flags or saffron flags or whatever you want to have and, claim, why did you write this? So Moksh was given the job. Moksh is a contemporary philosopher teaching philosophy in Bombay University. I think he just retired. Got his pensions. No, it's not so easy to get pension from Bombay University. So he's just retired.
60 now.
Yeah, he was born in 67.
Yeah, 67.
Yeah.
So Moksh is the contemporary character whose life is braided with the philosopher Ajita.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the book actually has not just Ajita's story, but also Moksh's story. So it's not just set in the past, and so it's also set in contemporary Bombay, and there's a lot about Bombay's history that also comes through in this book.
So yeah,
Also,
I like
just
that.
rudely stop me whenever you want me to stop.
No. I'm just here to give you some cues because we did speak twice before, Sridhar and I, and we had like nice long conversations about all kinds of things. So I'll let you do most of the speaking. The Ulipo movement, Raymond Queneau has described Ulipans as rats who construct the labyrinth from which they plan to escape. And in the book, what Sridhar has done is in every chapter there is one letter left out. So the first chapter is written without letter B, and then so on it goes. And so you can read the chapter from 1 to 26, or you can start where the letter A has been left out, and then you can read A to Z. And as the moderator today, I read it in both ways, and it was fascinating. But as a writer, my question to you is, why would you make your life harder? Like writing is hard as it is. Is it because you're a physicist and you're used to like rigor and your academic background gives you a lot of discipline and you like difficulty? Why would you do that?
At various levels, right? I mean, as writers, or as a poet yourself, we find what we think is the best way to express ourselves. I mean, we can just say, pass me the bottle. But if you were to do that, string a set of sentences like that together, you don't get a novel out of it. You have to add something to it. I mean, you'll get a novel out of it, but that's called something else. Right? That's a novel that sells. So I wanted to...
We'll sell this, don't worry, Sri. We'll add some sexual references in the end.
I really felt that one has to challenge oneself as a writer.
Right.
In my first book also, this was the case. Not so much, but I decided...
Twice Written was your first book.
book.
Yes. Yeah.
And in this book, as Suchi said, each chapter is what is called a lipogram. A lipogram is where you write the whole thing without one letter of the alphabet. So in the first chapter, I don't have B. In the second chapter, I don't have D, and so on. Yeah? And I number the chapters also. So I invite the reader to read it following the numbers or following the letters, because in each chapter I have the letter and the number. So whatever you do, you'll read the same book. That is the third challenge I set myself.
Correct.
So yeah, book doesn't challenge you, then it's not satisfying, right?
I think that's true for the reader also, because it was, it's like kind of, for me, reading the book is like playing a game. So you're, as the author, you're very much present in the reader's mind when you start reading the book. And I remember when I reached the chapter where you had left out the letter D, I was like, oh, how's he going to do this? And very conveniently, he had the whole chapter is in the present tense, so he doesn't have to say he said, he remembered, she swayed.
No, this was all planned in advance. Luckily, I have two protagonists.
Right.
So one protagonist who's in the past, I write in the past tense. The other guy who's contemporary, I write in the present tense.
Right.
Uh,
And you chose the right chapter for each.
Yeah, this all worked out. So I knew that it had to be a moksha chapter for D and so
for the D. But
and as I said, naming people was such a very big deal, because I had named people. I made sure that Ajita and Moksha have no common letters between them, so that in the chapters that I write about Moksha, I don't need to write about Ajita and so on. But there are a lot of other characters. In fact, my books are all filled with too many characters, and there's so many characters, and I would give them a name and then realize, oh no, but this person can't be called this, because this person, like, I had named one character Jeannie, and then she had to appear in the chapter J, because Ajita could not appear in chapter J.
You could have named them with G or instead of J or something, but yeah, you would have run into problems at some point.
I changed the name, yeah.
So for me, the experience of reading the book was a bit like reading Vikram Seth's Golden Gate. So at the beginning, I was very hyper-aware.
It's just a little better than Golden Gate.
Yeah. I think so. Please buy the book afterwards. You know where to find it. Because in the beginning, very aware of the form that you have used, very aware of the writer's rigor in constructing the sentences. And 3 chapters into Golden Gate, I forgot that I was reading poetry. I forgot that there were rhyme schemes. And it's the same with your book. I was completely absorbed in the story, and I forgot to pay attention. In fact, I didn't even sort of pay attention to the chapter titles. I was just into the story completely.
Thank you.
So do you imagine a reader when you write, and do you think was that your intended consequence for the reader?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you want to play a game, you want to play a difficult game also, but you don't want the reader to be bothered by it. It's just like we discussed, it's when you write poetry with meter, you know, you're very consciously looking at iambic, meter, whatever you want to use, but you don't want the reader to miss out on the experience. So the affect, the human experience, has to be a very integral part of it. And that is something that I have chosen to do in this book. And I don't want the reader to get so involved in my game and, you know, not enjoy the book as such.
Correct. But yeah, it is. I think it is a fun book to read in more ways than one.
Can we read a bit?
You can read a bit, yeah. You want to read a moksha chapter, and then we can end with a Ajita chapter.
Okay, I'll do a moksha chapter. I won't tell you which letter I left out. And
you can guess.
Anyone who guesses gets a toffee.
You can play the game with the author on stage.
So this, sorry, am I audible? Yeah. This is Moksh, the contemporary philosopher, talking to his friend Ananya, whom he calls Ono, and he's telling her about the book that he's writing, the book on Ajita that he's writing, and the kind of problems that a writer seeking to do something like that will face. Right? I've been struggling with this question throughout. How much of my book is history with roots in something like evidence? I put in quite some effort coming to grips with my subject, but in the end I don't feel convinced. But you would know your sources, the text so well, I'm sure. They would give you the evidence you look for. This is what Ono says. The texts only tell me so much. I piece together the story from the bits I find in the text. The story is reconstructed, but is it history or is it fiction? But your book isn't fiction in the form it is now, is it? No, but I'll rewrite it. The whole thing? It's only 60% done. It will require time, but I'm not short of it. There's no hurry. He continues. You know, somewhere in presenting this objective description of events, history loses sight of the person. These events in history somehow reflect the sum of every person's life, the prime figures, if not everyone. So one needs to shift the focus to the lived experiences of these people. One needs to revisit their lives, their homes, their work, their lives, their loves.
A. Okay. So, do you know which chapter it is in the reading? It's the first chapter. You can read the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can start with this chapter, or you can start in the linear way.
I'm sorry, I don't have that many toffees. There were many A's coming from the audience.
So normally I don't like to assume something about the author based on what their characters say. And you also mentioned that you made it fiction so that you have a little more freedom in the things that you say. But because there is in the book a lot of description of atoms, there is talk about what matter really is, and this is not in the contemporary braid of the story, it's in the 5th century philosophy. So can you tell us a little bit about these ideas since you're a physicist?
No, not because I'm a physicist, but because atomism is actually goes back to 6th century BC. And so it's a 2,500-year-old idea. And it has its roots in philosophy. That's why I said no. Physics borrowed it much, much later.
Okay. So as a philosopher, can you tell me about physics?
No, so in fact, this is something that people don't realize. That's an idea that goes back that many years. And it was exactly at that time that it happened, around the time that the Charvakas lived. And it happened at the same time in the 3 great cultures. It happened in Greece, it happened in Persia, and it happened in our subcontinent. And it's quite remarkable how rigorously they followed these ideas. And I mean, it's not enough to say that everything is made up of little bits, right? Which is what atomism is. But they started asking much deeper questions. Okay, so we say everything is made up of atoms. So the speaker is made up of atoms, this speaker is made up of atoms.
We are all made of stardust in the common cliche.
Yeah, that's a cliche that only Americans like to peddle, right? No, but to think that inanimate matter, living things, thinking beings, they're all made up of the same atoms. Okay? The question is, if you have a black object, is it made up of black atoms? And if you're wearing a blue shirt, is it made up of blue atoms, and so on? And people thought that this would be ridiculous, because if you try to carry the infinity of the phenomenal world to the world of atoms, then it's kind of meaningless. So what God proposed eventually was the idea that, which I think the Charvakas originally proposed, which is the idea of emergence. And that is that atoms as such have no color.
They don't have any characteristics.
When you put atoms together, then color emerges as an emergent phenomenon. So just like color, in fact, now we believe that even life is an emergent phenomenon. That's what modern biology would like to believe. And we don't have a very detailed answer to that, but that's where some of our research is going. And but it's fascinating to think that this idea, which has served us so well, in fact, I would say this 2,500-year-old history had a recent, I wouldn't say the end of it, but one stage of it ends with the discovery in 2012 of the Higgs boson, right, at CERN. So that discovery completes the one saga of atomism. That's one of my books.
One of your other books.
Forthcoming.
So the world that you have built for Ajita, like because you keep reiterating that it's fiction, the world that you see Ajita as living in seems very modern in the reading. There are debates, there are discourses. They are living in a very intellectually free
The
society.
debates and discourses were actually part of them. And in fact, in our world, we seem to be not able to say anything. But I also did some things along with playing these games. I also did use some strategies in my writing. What I did was, I said if I'm talking about that period, I'll talk about nouns from that period. Okay,
Nouns.
but the verbs,
Right.
the verbs will be contemporary.
That's
Because
right.
I believe that they also lived and thought and emoted and did things the way we are doing.
That's why it sounds very modern.
It sounds very modern, yes. But
yeah.
they didn't have SUVs there.
So your whole construct is a very kind of disciplined kind of writing. We're thinking of what nouns to use, what verbs to use, what tenses.
Yes, I think through all this in my head, and I actually write like that. I am very resistant to editing, which is a very bad thing. But I usually work out most of it in my head and then put it down.
So I think we have a few minutes left. Let me just check the
Only
time.
few minutes?
Can we read another section? I should also say I feel a bit like I am acting out something from your book, because in your book there is an interview of the writer by someone who's an editor. So it feels a bit like I'm asking those questions.
Yeah, Ananya asking Moksha.
Yeah, Ananya has asking Moksh about the book he's writing. So I feel like you included me in some game. But let's read a little bit.
No, that's the nature of this book. Any reader who reads it, they get involved in it.
Okay.
5 minutes to talk about the whole universe.
So
one of the things, one of the reasons I chose to leave out letters in every chapter was also because my book is about people going missing, or people dying, or people disappearing from Moksh's life, from the period of Ajita, like not him, but his lover, for example, loses a husband and so on. So, in that sense, this book is also about the missing people from.
Maybe you can read like a short passage and then we'll break for questions.
Sorry, it's taking me 1 minute. So Ajita is, by this time in the book, become a famous philosopher, and he is invited to a very, very big conference, if you like, a sabha in Kashi. And he goes and wins the Vidvat Sabha, the debates in Kashi. And after winning the thing, instead of feeling, jubilant, he goes through a kind of emotional crisis at the point, and that's what I'm talking about here. The sun was not yet close to setting, but the late autumn evening was cool enough to be enjoyable. He watched a few boys at a distance, diving out of a boat to swim in the Ganges. It must be cold, he thought. But then his thoughts went back to his own childhood when he and his mates would splash about in the pond even in the coldest months. Even at this distance, Ajita could see only joy on the boys' faces. He longed to be like them, happy and with no anxiety. He decided to climb down and move close to the bank. As he made his way, his eyes fell on a woman so old that she was bent with age. The old woman's eyes seemed to speak of loss and pain. She seemed to convey a hopelessness that touched something deep inside Ajita. He moved and looked up to see a dead body being laid on a pile of wood. A young man standing by him with a pot in his hand, most likely the dead man's son, had a look of devastation on his face that seemed to be speaking the same language as the old woman's eyes. Feeling helpless himself, Ajita sat down and looked at the Ganges. In Kashi, the Ganges did not just flow. It was the city that moved, and in its vast motions took the mass of people along. The Ganges was an unmoving witness, and as Ajita noted, maybe even an unmoved witness. The spot that Ajita occupied at that moment was the dividing line between the tumult and intensity that was Kashi and the stillness that was the Ganges. That twilight zone that evokes doubt and questioning. Ajita had won the debate in the Vidvat Sabha, and it was his life's biggest moment. But as he sat by the banks of the Ganges, Ajita felt that that moment belonged to the tumultuous activity of Kashi. The Ganges had its own timekeeping, and in that estimate, the Sabha, the debate, and the win all dissolved into nothing.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Sridhar. Do we have time for one question? Aparna, one question. Okay, we have 50 seconds. Ask your questions quickly.
Hello, good afternoon, sir. You said that you employed lipograms to challenge yourself. Was it the first choice of a challenge, or were there other things from which you chose lipograms?
Yeah, one can challenge oneself in many different ways. I also wrote a poem to challenge myself just around that time as a kind of exercise for this novel. But yeah, finally when I chose the novel, I chose the lipogram.
We have one question at the back, and we'll close after that.
Sir, this is related to the lipogram constraint you place, right? Like you mentioned the characters you chose keeping in mind, but how did you deal with the verbs and the common nouns you use, right? Especially where you leave out the vowels, right? Like, did you, when you write a sentence, were you aware that I need not use this letter, or did you go back after writing a chapter and edit it?
No, initially it was very difficult, but when I got the hang of it, and because I'm used to writing poetry in meter and rhyme, I found it very similar. The exercise was very similar. So as I was telling Suchi, it's like rhythm. It's like in a dance. Till if someone tells you to move ahead and go back and lift your hand, it's very difficult to know what to do. But once you find the rhythm and you go with the music, then you know exactly what to do. And that's what was happening. I could write 3 or 4 paragraphs just like that without stopping myself. And then I would go back and check, and maybe 1 or 2 things I had to correct.
Thank you, Sridhar, for whom writing a difficult book is like choreographing a dance. Please find the book at the Ata Galata bookstore.